I think it's a shift in the value that parents are putting on the education they perceive their children are receiving in the public school system. I mean, it's a little nuanced from just they're no longer valuing education as much. I think there's more of a shift that parents aren't, I don't know that they believe in the system as much as they used to.
Right.
That's a little different.
Welcome to the show called Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. This is the show where we talk about everything homeschooling, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. We want to affirm and encourage you in the decision to homeschool, challenge and inspire you to take it to new heights, and celebrate everything you get to experience along the way in this adventure of a lifetime. We are your hosts, Davis and Rachael Carman, and today's show is titled Empty Classrooms. Okay, Rachael, let's talk homeschool.
Okay.
So, in March of 2024, there was an article titled Empty Classrooms, and it talks about a troubling phenomenon that started in 2020, continued in 2021, and then hasn't slacked off since. And that is that schools are seeing what's called chronic absenteeism. Now, that's defined as if a student misses 18 days of school year or more for any reason, that's considered chronically absent. And prior to the pandemic in 2019, if you looked at all students, 15% of students fell into that category of chronically absent. In 2020, it was the highest. Then 21, 22, and 23, it's at 26%, got up to 28%. So almost doubled the number of students that just miss 18 or more days of school for any reason is pretty significant. Now, it does vary depending on some other factors. So in rich districts, it went from 10 to 19, again, almost doubling. The average, of course, was 15 up to 26. And in poor districts, it went from 19 up to 32. So very high. But here's what was interesting. Some people thought that the schools that opened earlier after the pandemic didn't get to experience this. It was the ones that delayed opening. Okay. No effect there. Okay. For schools that started early, it went from 16 to 28. The average was 15 to 26. And schools that, on the other end, it was 16 to 25. So all pretty much the same numbers. Okay. So we got this very clear and persistent problem of absenteeism in public schools. Now, I want to step back in time, do a flashback real quick, to when I was in 7th and 8th grade.
You're going to share with the audience your story.
I'm going to share my story. Okay. So in 7th grade, I'm going to school, not thinking about anything, being a good student, which I did, and I enjoyed school. And at the end of the year, we had awards day. Yep. And different people were getting different awards. And then they give out perfect attendance awards. And I didn't get it because I missed one day of school that year. Sorry. And I thought to myself, well, I can get perfect attendance, so I'm going to get that award next year just because that's easy for me. I was healthy, I guess. So 8th grade comes along, and I'm just bopping along, but I got in the back of my mind, I'm going to get the perfect attendance award, and maybe a few other ones too, I don't know, but I wanted that award. Yeah. Well, the teachers went on strike that year for 4 days. Ooh. And
when in the year?
I don't remember. Okay. Fall or spring, obviously. and families faced a dilemma. Do we send our kids to school during this teacher strike or do we keep them home? And so my parents decided to keep me and my siblings home those 4 days. So we get to the end of the school year. I'm expecting to get my perfect attendance award.
I'm so sorry.
And I didn't get it because they counted me absent those 4 days that the teachers were on strike.
I'm sorry.
And so my attitude changed on this whole perfect attendance award. I decided,
Never
Who
mind.
cares?
Yep.
Who cares? I had perfect attendance in 7th grade. I don't know what my one absence was, but I'm sure I could have been there if I would have known about it.
Yeah.
And I definitely had perfect attendance in 8th grade because those 4 days didn't count. So I didn't worry about it from then on. I just told myself 0 to 4 absences is perfect attendance in my book. So anyways, I had good attendance in school. I did not fall into this chronic absentee problem, but
no.
So something's going on in the last 4 years that we want to help homeschool families avoid.
Yeah.
And here's what this article says are some of the underlying fundamental issues. And number one is a shift in the value that families are placing on school, on learning, on education.
Yeah, I mean, I think I accept that with a nuance, right? I think it's a shift in the value that parents are putting on the education they perceive their children are receiving in the public school system. I mean, it's a little nuanced from just they're no longer valuing education as much. I think there's more of a shift that parents aren't, I don't know that they believe in the system as much as they used to.
Right.
That's a little different. That's a little different.
Well, and I even think to myself, if we had kids in public school and we missed a lot of school during the pandemic, and now we're coming back and all these other students are missing, before the pandemic, I probably had an attitude of, oh, we can't go on vacation in the middle of October because school's in session. Whereas now, if I got a business trip and I want to take the family on this opportunity, I'm going to say, who cares? Who cares if the kids miss 5 days of school? Let's just go take them on this vacation in the middle of October. So I don't know if other families are having that same kind of attitude that I'm thinking I would have if I was in those shoes, but there definitely seems to be much less value and attention given to what's happening.
It would be interesting to have that precision of a question asked on this survey, because I remember this has been before the pandemic. I think it was the kids' orthodontist, interestingly enough. He was talking about they had met this massive, I think it was a financial goal for his orthodontist practice or whatever, and they were going to go and celebrate in Hawaii, and his kids were in school, and he's working on my teeth, and he was basically saying, I could not believe it, they're my kids, and I had to go before the board, or I mean something ridiculous, to get his kids out of school for 4 days to go to Hawaii to be with their family to celebrate the success of their father's business.
Right.
And I remember leaving going, okay, this is the tail wagging the dog here, because this father has every right to take his kids out of school, to be with their family, to go and celebrate success. And yet at that point, he really felt like he was beholden to the system. And he said to me, maybe we need to change the date. And I'm sitting there, my mouth is open because he's working on my braces. And I'm just thinking to myself, no. But it's interesting that this report has come out now, because I wonder if same parents pick him up post-pandemic, if he would even think twice about it. Because you and I went on a vacation when school had started back, and we had anticipated on that vacation that we would see fewer school-age children. I'm going to be honest with you. I was astounded at how many school-age children were where we were for our vacation. And I remember several of them talking about, oh, well, you'll have to go back to school next week. All of your friends have already been in school this week. And I was just like,
Yeah.
They seem very lax and very comfortable with their kids having missed this entire week of class.
Well, and that leads to the second point, because the first has to do with the value or the devaluing of education that's happening.
Yeah.
The second is a disengagement.
Oh, yeah.
With the whole process.
Yeah.
And that can be because it's all a sham anyways, and you're playing the charade willingly.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter. Your kids know it doesn't matter, but we have to be in school.
Right.
But we can miss a few days.
Right.
So there's this whatever attitude, which isn't good either.
No, it's not. And I think, and we talked about this before we came on the show, but I really think that disengagement that they're pinpointing in this article specifically in school settings, I think we're seeing it across the board. I don't think customer service has ever been at the low that it's at right now. Employers are talking about the disengagement of their employees that they're paying, and how they're not doing the simplest of tasks, things that they were, quote, trained to do. They're not doing it unless they're directed to do it. I think there is, across our cultural board, there has been a disengagement, and that's concerning.
Well, right. And in many ways, it could have been starting in the public education systems.
Fair.
And you got 89% of students there, and then they grow up disengaged with their education. Well, the next natural thing to do is to be disengaged with your first job, with your primary job, with your higher education in college, with whatever you're doing.
With church. I mean, that's the concern.
Exactly.
Because we've definitely seen it in churches. People have disengaged. I think once COVID happened and the churches that tragically closed down for that versus the churches that didn't, I think there was sort of an anticipation, boy, we can hardly wait to get back. But the reality is some people didn't get back. And even in the getting back, some people are just happy to do it online, anonymously behind a screen every Sunday morning, and not ever re-engage. And so I think it would be interesting to read more studies on just the broader base of the disengagement, because I think that is a thing.
Well, here's the last major point of the article, and that is it's not just the students that are disengaged.
Right. Yeah.
It's not just the families as a whole that are not valuing education like they used to. Teachers are also missing more school. They have an attendance problem themselves. So the teachers may possibly don't value what they're doing.
Or don't feel valued.
Or they're disengaged, or they feel unvaluable themselves. So you got a problem at the teacher level, at the student level, at the parent level, which just, again, we're homeschool advocates. So when you're homeschooling, one, your kids get perfect attendance. They're there every day. Awesome.
That's true.
Even if they're sick, they're in school.
They are.
Perfect attendance for all kids every year. But as parents, you're feeling the responsibility. It all rests with you. The buck stops with you. So you're engaged.
Yeah.
You're fully engaged. Now, your kids may be at places where you have to help engage them, depending on their personality, their bent, their interest, a lot of other things, but they're in school. They're not absent. You're not looking, if you have 3 kids, you're not looking at an empty table. You got all 3 of them.
Right.
Even if one of them's sick, if one's misbehaving, if one's struggling with whatever they're doing, you can engage with each of them and hopefully get each of them engaged with their own learning process. So it's a much better model when you're home educating, because you're not going to have any empty classrooms.
No, and what I was going to say is because in homeschooling, it's all learning all the time, right? It's 24/7, 365. That's what the model is. And so this engagement, both sides, right? And I will say this, and we don't have to chase this very far, but I do think there is a real plot by the enemy to try to pick, and I'm going to say especially moms, off and get them disengaged with their kids and get them distracted with their iPhone or their screen of some kind or social media of some kind. And here's the deal. Your kids know whether or not you're engaged. Yeah. And I would say you do too. But it is important for us to be intentionally engaged, because that's the opportunity that God's given us. And I think too, if you want to talk about the separation of the men and the boys, kids raised in an environment where the parents, the teachers, the parents, the principal, and the students are engaged with each other on a daily basis with good literature, starting with the Bible, and they are engaged academically with each other all day long. They are outside, engaged with God's creation and nature. They are engaged with each other in relationships. They're working things through. They're helping each other. That is an education. And those are people that change the world.
Right.
Because engagement takes work, it takes perseverance, it takes intentionality, it takes all of these things that people are choosing to disengage, are not growing in their character in those ways. And I really believe that at the end of the day, the people who grow in their character, grow in their relationships, do the hard things, are really going to be the ones who change the world.
Oh no, that is so well said. And I just had pictures of us outside with all of our kids, running around, exploring, collecting, discovering God's creation, learning about it, getting excited about it. And based on the topic of today's podcast, everybody's there because we always have our family together.
Yeah.
There's not an empty classroom where you're just speaking to the void, where you don't know if your students are learning. When you're homeschooling, you know if they're engaged, just like you said. They also know if you are engaged or if you're distracted by your phone or something else, a phone call, work, who knows what. So make sure that you're fully engaged and paying attention so that your kids can learn how to reciprocate that.
Exactly.
So great points there. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This has been Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries, and we are your hosts, Davis and Rachael Carman. Have a great day, and until next time, we are walking by faith and enjoying the homeschooling adventure of a lifetime.